As you guys probably can tell by now, I am an absolute freak when it comes to October. I am your classic white girl trash who is obsessed with fall and Halloween, but I also love it because it's my birthday month! So because today is my actual birthday, I wanted to do something a little bit different. I've got 3 of these good old large pumpkins, and I really wanted to carve them in preparation for Halloween while answering a Q&A. I just felt like doing something a little bit more cozy and laid back this week. I didn't really want to dedicate hours and hours and hours to sewing. I kind of want to just enjoy and relax on my birthday before I get started on my Over the Garden Wall costume next week. Okie dokie. Pumpkin number 1. We will do the hardest one first. That's this guy. Oh yeah, that will look good. Okay. How do you live a sustainable life? For me, living a sustainable life is always a journey. I don't think anybody is going to be, 100% sustainable. It's always about making small choices kind of all the time to get you closer and closer and closer to being the most sustainable that you can be. So over the years, we've made a lot of smaller changes, like we replaced all of our plastic Tupperware with glass Tupperware. We don't buy things like single-use plastics and stuff like that. No water bottles. We always carry a water bottle, a reusable one on ourselves. We've got those beeswax wraps rather than saran wraps. We try to invest in things as well. So if we're actually going to buy something, we would rather save up and spend a bit more on something that's going to last us quite a long time rather than just buying something, using it for a year, and then kind of needing to throw it out or replace it anyways. We're also really working towards the goal of growing our own food. So earlier this year, I tilled basically my entire front yard to make it into gardening space. People don't seem to realize how much of an impact that growing your own food can make, even if it's just a small amount. Our food system has such a long process line, and there's so much wastage and inefficiencies that go along with that. And I have a lot of work to go as far as this goes. This year we got a decent harvest. We got quite a few potatoes, quite a few carrots, but not even the whole garden plot even got something planted in it this year. So I'm hoping that next year it's a bit better. I'm definitely learned a lot as far as what works in my garden and what I need to do to improve it. But yeah, growing your own food makes a big, big difference. Also, am I the only one these days who actually I save my pumpkin seeds and I roast them? I don't know anybody who really does that anymore these days, and I love it. I grew up with my mom doing that for us every year, and they're just so darn tasty. One area that I am still kind of struggling with is our mileage. We both work in the city. I only work on average 3 days a week, but Brock works every single day. And we don't really work anywhere near each other, so we can't really carpool. We work at different times. So there's 2 vehicles driving all of that way every single week. It's hard on our vehicles, it's expensive, and it's not good for the environment. I don't really know how to fix that other than just not working, but we can't really not work. But for right now, it is still something that I think about a lot and would like to maybe change. What attracts you to homesteading and what does it entail? I think my mama asked this question. So I'm really drawn to the homesteading lifestyle because I think it's just a much more natural way to live. You're far more a part of the natural ecosystem when you're homesteading, and you can't work against nature. You really have to work with it. And it's a lot of hard work. Nothing ever comes easy in a homesteading lifestyle, It's definitely not the convenient option for sure. I know for us, we really want to get out on an actual acreage someday soon. Where we are, we live in a small village, so we can't actually keep any livestock or anything like that. And that's a big part of what we want to do as far as our homestead goes. We would want to raise animals for not just for food, but also for things like I would really like some sheep so I can spin my own yarns when I make my knitting and my crochet stuff. For us, the homestead really feeds into that idea of wanting to be more sustainable, because we're going to basically be trying to produce and live off as much that we can provide ourselves. I also really want to be able to raise my kids with a really deep sense of love and respect for nature. And I think that when you are separated from it, you can really appreciate nature, but you don't really get to experience it in the same way. I think it's also a good way to teach our kids like gratitude and discipline, you know? When you're living a lifestyle where things don't come easy, then kids are really going to appreciate where that kind of stuff comes from. I think in this day and age, it's also really important to give your kids the space to breathe and kind of learn on their own without you holding their hands. I want my kids to be curious and want to explore and find things out for themselves. And I think if we're constantly scheduling them and holding their hand, they can't do that. And of course, as parents, we want to give them a safe space. And in my opinion, nature is one of the safest spaces to do that in. Some might disagree with me there, but I think it is. Obviously, I'm not just gonna like hand them a pickaxe and like tell them to go fight a bear. That's not what I mean. But I want our kids to kind of have that childhood of them like, you know, growing up and catching frogs and, you know, starting like worm gardens and all of that really fun stuff that I feel like a lot of kids don't get these days. I mean, I didn't really get it. I grew up in the city, so I was just lucky enough to have grandparents that owned a cabin in the middle of the woods. I think it's more about just creating a life that's a bit more connected, a bit more communal. I really want my kids to have that, so I really want that. Let's face it. What keeps you inspired to keep creating? That's a good question. For me, throughout the years, I have discovered that if I don't create on a regular basis, if I'm not doing something, my brain chemistry gets a little wonky. I have suffered from really bad anxiety and depression in the past, and I've learned that if I don't have creative projects, then it kind of sets back in. It kind of creates a bit of a negative feedback loop where I'm not creating, so I get worse, and then I don't want to create, and then I get worse, and then it just loops. it just loops. It feeds into itself. And then it's even harder to kind of pull myself out of that. Luckily, my mental health hasn't been such an issue that I've had to go on any kind of medication, but I definitely view art and creation and hobbies as a bit of like a health regimen. Without it, I'm not healthy. So I find that even when I'm not necessarily inspired to keep creating, I just gotta pick something up. I gotta start on something, otherwise it's gonna end badly for me. If I'm looking for inspiration though, I find that consuming other people's art is always a good place to start for me. Watching somebody do something really cool makes me wanna do something really cool, you know? It's like an energy that you get. And I always love learning new skills. Like pretty much all of my hobbies, they're self-taught. I didn't really take any classes or whatever. Every once in a while, I'll see somebody doing something and I go, hey, I want to do that. And then I Google what I need to start doing it, and then I get the stuff, and then I just start doing it. I'm kind of one of the worst people when it comes to like being taught, because when it comes to anything creative, I learn best by just winging it. As I've explained with like my sewing and stuff like that, I wing things all the time. I just pick stuff up and go, I think this will work. And if it doesn't, then it doesn't, and I learn from it. I've been drawing since I was a kid. My mother's actually a really amazing sketch artist. So she always encouraged us to do art and create. We always had pencil crayons and coloring books and things like that for us to do when we were younger. And then when I was a teenager, my grandma taught me how to crochet. And in the last 5-10-ish years or so, I've really kind of exploded as far as the things that I know how to do. I remember being in high school and watching Bob Ross and just being like, hey, I want to do that. So I got my mom to buy me a whole bunch of oil paint supplies. I bought a lot myself. That stuff's not cheap. I macrame, I embroider, I whittle spoons, for God's sakes. And then I learned to sew, I make birdhouses. Well, I've made a birdhouse, I should say. And I knit. I kind of think that like if you're not, it doesn't have to be constant, but if you're not trying to learn new things, if you're not trying to broaden your own skill sets, then life gets pretty boring. And maybe that's what you want. Maybe that works for you, but it doesn't work for me. I think if I'm not growing in some way or another, I get a bit stagnant. I get bored. I like being kept on my toes. How did cleaning up all the styrofoam from the pumpkins go? Not well. Not well, friends. I think we just kind of now have to accept the fact that there's going to be styrofoam dust pervading our lives until the end of time. If you won the lottery, what would you do? This is gonna be really disappointing. We would probably spend about half of it on buying the acreage that we would want and getting said acreage to a point where it was like super functional. So like we'd probably like put in barns, invest in a tractor, that kind of thing. And then the rest we would absolutely invest. It's a boring adult answer, I know, but it is exactly what we would do. Right now we put like a decent chunk of money away every single month towards our retirement fund. Whereas if we were to put, half of our winnings into a bigger investment, we could basically just like watch it grow over the next 20 years and then use the initial investment and the interest made off of it to retire on that alone. And then we could basically take the money that we're currently putting away for investments and put it towards things like traveling and experiences, fun stuff like that we wouldn't normally get to do. Like we wouldn't quit our jobs or anything like that, but we would just kind of like set up our future in a way that we could just kind of live comfortably for the rest of our lives, and hopefully money just wouldn't be such a stress anymore. Oh, ducks. You're not attached at all. Oh, pumpkin carving. I always think it's gonna be like a happy, relaxing time, and then I'm just like, Alright. Yeah, we won the lottery. That would be it. I think like initially we would probably do like one big trip with like my family or something like that. Me and my parents, we've talked a lot about going to Scandinavia together, but would be a very expensive trip. So I would really love to be able to take them and do something like that. But other than that, it would pretty much just go all into investments. 'Cause we boring. Can you solve a Rubik's Cube? Hell no. Nope. I just mess those things up. I remember one time when I was little, I actually just peeled the stickers off and moved them around. And that was my way of solving it. Oh, how long have you had Siggy and Björn? So I think it was about 3.5 years ago now that Siggy had wandered into the yard of one of my family friends. She just kind of showed up one day, and our friends there, like, they have a cat, so they pretty much know all of the neighborhood cats kind of thing, and they had never seen Siggy before. So they tried for weeks and weeks and weeks trying to track down an owner for her. And nobody claimed her. And then it was about, I think it was like the day before that they were gonna take her into like a shelter or whatever, that I convinced Brock to just go meet her, right? You know, I did the classic like, oh, we're just gonna meet her. It doesn't mean we're gonna take her home. And I'm sure Brock was like, I'm sure. Because at the time we weren't actually allowed to have pets in our tiny basement city apartment. So we went to meet her, and oh my gosh, was she just one of the sweetest cats I had ever met. Like right off the bat, like never met us and was just like, oh, pet me, pet me, pet me. So sweet, just wanted love and attention. And I fell in love right away. I know Brock wasn't actually that opposed. And so we brought her home. She was a fugitive, an illegal immigrant, if you will, but that's okay. And I think it was about 2 weeks after we brought her home that, you know, she had gotten some ear mites, I'm assuming probably just from living on the streets for who knows how long. And so I brought her into the vet, and the vet was doing a bit of just like the, you know, standard physical. And she was feeling around on her abdomen there and just kind of stopped and looked at me and went, I think she feels a little full. I think she might be having babies. And sure enough, she was pregnant, which was a shock. Based off of how far along she was, though, the vet said that she would have had to have gotten pregnant within like a few days of us bringing her home. That's sneaky, that one. So that was a really fun experience. I had never had a cat who's had babies or anything like that before. She looked like a football for a very long time. It was very sweet. And then in September of that year, she had 5 babies. There was Plop, Cow, Patches, Spud, and Bjorn. And it was really cool because I was there for the whole like birth process. I think my friend Alex called me a kitty midwife or something like that. Bjorn was like the smallest little runt of the litter. At the time, we didn't know which of the kittens we were going to keep. I just knew that I wanted to keep one of them. But looking back, I think I kind of always knew from the get-go that it was going to be Bjorn. I mean, I named him a Viking-inspired name, just like Siggy. And I always kind of have a soft spot for like the runts and stuff like that. And he was really small. So we had all 5 kittens for the first like 8 weeks. And then it was actually Boxing Day, the day after Christmas, that 3 of the other kittens went to their new homes. So Plop went home with a lifelong family friend, Kyle and Amy, and their family. And he became Barry, like the fruit, not like the name. I actually got to see Barry in person not too long ago, just a couple weeks ago. He's doing really good. He seems really happy. He's so big in comparison to Bjorn and Siggy. Like he's just a long, large cat. And just like the sweetest thing on the planet. I think they pretty much all took after Siggy in that respect. And they've all just become just the sweetest cats. Why are you so obsessed with Halloween? That's a good question. For me, it's partly nostalgic. Every single year, my mom used to actually make our costumes by hand. And, you know, like now that I sew, I really appreciate all the work and effort that she would have had to have put in every single year just to give us silly costumes for a day, you know? And when I was a kid, I kind of always loved like dressing up and performing and stuff like that. I even went to school for acting when I was older. So I think that just kind of also fed into that as well. And also for me, it's just something that makes me feel really connected to my heritage. I think like a lot of, you know, Canadians whose family has been here for generations, a lot of our like culture and traditions were really lost, right? Like they were just kind of fizzled out. And a lot of that like culture and traditions is really just no longer a part of like our family's identity. But for both me and my mom, we both have this like just inherent connection to our Scottish and Irish heritage. It's a really interesting sensation to basically feel like a homesickness for a place in a country that I've never actually been to before. And this might sound cheesy, but I do think that there's just something either in my spirit or in my DNA that just calls me back there. For me personally, I've spent quite a few years actually, kind of looking more into the Scottish traditions and things like that, and trying to kind of revive them for my immediate family and for future generations. So Samhain is something that I celebrate on a yearly basis. Again, it kind of goes into that piece of like feeling a bit more connected and everything like that to nature and its cycles. And so now Halloween has kind of just had this natural evolution in my lifetime from being this like very, you know, the fun classic Halloween to a bit more of a traditional Samhain celebration where, you know, I make sure that it's like a final harvest. I try to cook a big meal, preferably from things that I've grown, or at least like locally grown things. We have a bonfire, that kind of thing. I know I'm really looking forward to making things like corn husk dolls and stuff with my kids when we have them. Alrighty guys, so that is one pumpkin done. I'm happy with it. Lettering is very difficult. This piece technically isn't attached. I have a piece of toothpick holding him on. But that took me 2 hours and I have 2 more to go. I know. So I'm gonna finish the other 2 probably tomorrow or the day after. And that way you can still see them in the reveal, but I don't have to film the long and arduous process of carving these bad boys. I guess by the time you're watching this, it is my actual birth date. I'll probably be on my way to the mountains to spend a small getaway with my family. My sister's actually going to be coming all the way from BC. There we go. Oh, I love him. I'd love to see how you guys are decorating for Halloween or carving your pumpkin, so let me know down in the comments. As always, if you had as much fun today as I did, please drop a like and subscribe down below. I try to upload every single Friday. But other than that, I guess stay spooky, my friends. Bye! And excuse me, son. Can you get... Oh, I hope you heard that. That was a good one. If you... Shut up, Bethany. So the first... Little ghosties down... You can't hear me because Oh, transitions. I need tape. um